Okay, I hope everyone can hear me. Um, so I'm not getting any feedback. Uh, my name is Ike Jones, and I'm a software developer out of Indianapolis, Indiana, in the United States. I've been writing code for about 20 years, and I just wanted to talk to you about some of my experiences around DevOps and Agile and team culture. So without further ado, I will get started. So in the beginning, we had waterfall and we had monolithic applications. We really didn't have any source control, no real peer reviews. And most of our deployments were manual, like it's walking punch cards down or putting something on a floppy disk and deploying it, or later on dragging and dropping it via remote desktop, things like that. It was a real headache to deal with. And then around 2001, a group of guys went up into the mountains and they came back down with this thing called the Agile Manifesto. And it came up with some concepts, some of which were already around, but it kind of put them together. Deliver early and often, focus on delivering value, continual improvement, building cross-functional teams, improve source control and versioning, and reducing the feedback loop between the developers and the customers. So this really led to better product development as far as software engineering. But what about IT ops? We had the developers, we had the customers, we had the product owners, but we kind of forgot about IT ops. So what did we do? We went back and got IT ops. So with that came DevOps and improved communication and collaboration between developers and the operations side. And then you had improved CI/CD, no more manual deployments. You're using pipelines now, and you're continuously integrating. And you have automated deployments, and you're writing all of your infrastructure as code, right? Everyone's doing that, right? I'm just kidding. Not everyone's doing it, but some of us are, some of us aren't. It's a good thing to do. You have application performance monitoring, and we kind of saw this shift from having IT software projects to IT software products. And that really allowed us to focus more on delivering a good product instead of just having a project that after your completion of the code is done, you just throw it over the wall, you forget about it. No, it's a product. It lives forever. There's no end date. You're always going to have to support this until you replace it or there's no longer a need for it. So, give you a little bit of background and context on where I was when I started this journey. So where I worked, we processed over 140 million pay transactions per year. We managed over $1.17 trillion in retirement and health benefits. We dispersed over $500 billion a year in payments. We managed $600 billion in international sales. And we had about, estimate 12,000 total employees split up across the United States, Europe, and Asia. About 2,000 of those are IT employees, some employees and some are contractors. And we managed about 120, give or take, production systems. And this is kind of the story of the agency's first large agile project. We had done some smaller ones before, that were generally like 6 weeks to a few months. I don't think anyone of those really were like large scale that went beyond like 6 months of development. So this is the first like really big one that we did, and it managed about, I would say, $200 billion of transactions a year. So it was really large scale, very important. And we decided we're going to go from this tiny project and go straight and jump into this huge project instead of, just scaling up and getting smaller wins to build up our confidence and address things that we would see as we scaled up. But we decided to go large, go big or go home. And so this is kind of the story of that. So this is a timeline to give you some more context of where we were as an agency. So you have the land before time, which is the waterfall. And then you had in 2001, you have Agile. 2009 was the first DevOps days. We have our Azure Indie meetup now in 2020, which is cloud-based. And we are here in 2020. And so this red dot on the left is where we were in 2017. We weren't fully agile, and we were still kind of transitioning from waterfall. We were kind of stuck in a bubble. And what happened was I ended up going to some IT conferences, and I got to see Donovan Brown and Abel Wang and Damon Brady speak about DevOps. And I had never really heard about DevOps at that point. I kind of was just stuck in this bubble. And once I heard them speak, like it just blew my mind on like what was happening with like pipelines and automated testing and things like that. So while I was at the conference, of course, IT professional, software engineer, I always have my laptop with me. So I said, okay, if they can do it and they make it seem easy, let's see if I could spin something up and get it deployed out to the cloud. So I had some code already that I was working on. So I went and built my first pipeline. It took about an hour. There was some little hiccups along the way, but I was sitting at an empty bar at the end of the conference, an empty hotel bar that wasn't being used. I wasn't there drinking. But me and my buddy got this pipeline up and running at this bar counter, and we were just amazed, and it just blew our minds. So I had a choice going back. Do I stay the course, or do I go down this path? And so what did I do? Of course, I took the red pill. And so begins my DevOps journey. So I became a PowerPoint professional. I started flow charting all of our processes, creating value stream maps, analyzing our projects, just collecting as much data as possible. And so what did that data show? It showed we have an average of 27 business days between feature request and development. We average 93 days between development and testing. We average 187 days between development and production. And we spent anywhere from $60,000 to $110,000 per month in testing. And that's generally on a per project basis. So as far as our large scale project, we spent anywhere from $60,000 to $110,000 a month in manual testing. And the time between deployment and production was 187 business days. So once you factor in holidays and weekends and people taking time off, it's more like a year between developing a feature and getting it in production. And that was on the good side of things. So 6 months to 2 years between feature requests and development for legacy projects. And there were some projects that had features that were requested 4, 5, 6 years ago that weren't even started on yet, just because of the processes not being in place and everything being waterfall. And like I was saying, up to 6 years to reach production. So it led to roughly 2,000 micro apps based in Microsoft Access, Excel, Word. Some were even in Fox Pro. We saw like some VB script, I would say applications. But so this led to like a huge risk, because generally IT didn't know about these. IT didn't develop them. They were usually developed by an accountant or a financial analyst or someone or some type of business analyst. And they're smart people, but their tradecraft isn't in software engineering or IT related. So what they built worked, but in most cases the code wasn't great and it was buggy, and it took a lot of effort to keep it running. So when that person left or retired, there was no one behind them. So we'd have these things break that no one knew about, and they were the glue holding together a lot of these like high priority business processes, because it took so long to get new features developed in the systems we have. So with all that knowledge, I went around and started evangelizing DevOps and explaining the data and demoing pipelines and how to do things in a new agile DevOpsy type of way, automated unit tests. And I was building a coalition, and I was trying to get as much people behind me as possible. And I was just pushing forward. And then ultimately, the waters got a little rough, to say the least. And the only reason this slide exists is to lead into the next slide, which is trying to implement DevOps at such a large place led to an epic failure. No matter what we did, we couldn't get more than 6 feet or 1.82 meters off the ground. Like we could implement little things, but like we couldn't do anything at scale. Like we could get approved. We were using Subversion at the time, but we couldn't get a server to run it on without going through 6 months to a year's worth of meetings. So we couldn't really implement, we couldn't get CI/CD pipelines up or automated deployments up. Everything was just so siloed off that we couldn't do it. And the process to get us to being able to do it took such a long time, and so many approvals and hoops and paperwork and meetings to go through, that people would just burn out, because we were trying to do this while also doing our regular job. So what did I do? I quit. It just ended up being too much. To keep pushing was just an exercise in insanity. So I would like to say I used to think this was like an epic failure, and maybe in the implementation of DevOps it was, but in the big picture of things, it wasn't. We made a lot of progress, and I learned a lot. So I'd like to go over what I learned, where we were good and where we were bad. And I don't really like to say where we were bad, so I like to say things that helped teach us. So we really lacked a shared context. We didn't really have any sort of tooling to manage our work items. Our Scrum Masters and Agile coaches, all they were given was Microsoft Excel. And so they would try to share that out to the stakeholders and the software engineers and the testers. And as soon as it was sent out, it was immediately out of date. Someone would change something and it wouldn't get distributed. It was just sent out in an email. It wasn't a shared document. We didn't have access to the newest tooling or the newest software to do this stuff. And it just led to not everyone being on the same page. And that really hurt us. We really lacked bi-directional communication. Things would get told down to us, and when we would respond, what we would say wouldn't always make it up to the highest levels where it needed to go. So that really hurt us. In the beginning, there was a lot of scope creep on this project, and it just grew and grew and grew. Instead of just focusing on one specific area and getting it done, we were just kind of being pulled all over the place. And every day, the scope of the work we were doing was just getting bigger and bigger without any of the other constraints changing. Like the time constraint wasn't changing, the budget constraint wasn't really changing. So it really led to us. The time constraint really hurt us because it really led to us burning out. We were working for about 3 years straight. We were working about 20 to 30 hours overtime a pay period, sometimes up to 50, depending on what was going on. Having this project be project-based hurt us because of these end dates. Even though this was going to be a long-running product, this thing is going to live for at least the next 20 years, considering that most of the systems of this size there were built and designed in the 70s and 80s, and they're still running to this day. This thing was going to live 20 to 30 years at least. Another thing that we learned was that our processes didn't scale. And I was alluding to that earlier with our agile processes. They just didn't scale because we didn't have the tooling or the processes we really needed to have. You can manage a small 6-week to 6-month project with 1 or 2 developers and one customer involved in an Excel spreadsheet. No problem. Everyone will be on the same page. Everyone will know what you're working on. That's not a problem. But when you scale it up to 10 to 15 developers and being engaged with 5 different customers, and then their management as stakeholders, and then C-level executives involved, it just doesn't scale well. Another thing we learned, focusing so much on manual testing instead of automated testing also doesn't scale well. And it was a huge, huge waste of time and money. It would take us at least a month after we developed a feature and got it into a testing environment to get the testing results back to know if what we built does what we thought it would do. And I don't know about you, but if I build something today, if I don't have that immediate feedback, if I have to wait, even if I have to wait until 2 days from now, I lose context of what I built and why I built it. And so having to regain that context is really taxing. Another thing we learned is that we really didn't have the greatest culture. And I know where it comes from with this place, but like I can't really get into why it comes from there. But I can say the mindset is just push through. Like if you got to get something done, like push through. Like yeah, it sucks, but just do it. Instead of working to fix the culture around it, the attitude is kind of just push through. Put out the fires and keep pushing. So with all that said, we did a lot of things well. We've really increased the developer velocity. We increased it by 85%. So like I was saying, like, yeah, we failed as far as the overall goal of implementing DevOps, but increasing our development velocity by 85%, that's really not a failure. That's a great achievement. We were great at incident response and management. We had to be. we had a couple of huge incidents, and we spent a lot of time on those, but we did really well in responding to them. We collaborated really well with our partners. What's crazy about this project is our ops partners were nowhere near us. It wasn't like we go down the hall to where ops was and talk to them. Our development team was spread across Indy, 2 locations in Ohio, and then upstate New York. And then all of our servers and our ops team resided out in the middle of Utah. But we actually built a pretty good partnership with them, and a lot of that came through those incident responses that we had to manage. I would say we were really good at customer engagement, and we worked one-on-one with our customers, which was great because that would give us instant feedback, and we could talk and we can show them things like right away. One of the problems with that was we just had too many customers at one time. I think we had like 15 different customers all at the same time, all wanting different things. So that's kind of the thing of us getting pulled in different directions. We should have just focused on one customer, built their requirements out first, and then expanded on that. But the decision was made to try and build as much of it as possible all at once. And that had a lot to do with the time constraints placed on us. We were good at feature development. And no, as a software engineer, I'm not biased. We were good. So this whole process, there were 3 things that like always seemed to repeat itself that kind of like held us back and we struggled with. And those were politics, our processes, and our culture. And I'm not just saying our team culture. This is like the whole organization, like the whole company's culture. Even though our team culture wasn't always great either. It was good in some aspects and it was terrible in others. So with politics, you got to have some political capital and you got to know when to use it. And you got to have it with your leadership, right? But you also have to have it with the people implementing.
I'm sorry, Ike, we have 1 minute.
You have to be able to get them to understand what the priority is. And you also have to be able to get your leadership to understand that, hey, we need some help here. We need some cover. Like this isn't going to get done. And that we expended a lot of our political capital above us. And then honestly, we didn't have as much political capital below us because it's hard to have political capital when you're working your people so much. When they're burned out, it's hard to have any political capital with them. Another thing we learned is you have to frame the issue for the audience. So don't get in the weeds on technical issues with your non-technical leadership. Now, if your leadership is from an engineering background, it might be okay, and it probably is okay. But generally, your leadership at that level wants to know, how is this going to save me money? How is this going to improve performance? Things like that. Basically, things related to money. And if you're framing something for the engineers implementing this, they don't necessarily care too much about how is this going to save the company money? How's it going to increase performance? You can talk to them about the technical things. I mean, they care about those things, but I promise you, us engineers, we want to talk more about the technical aspects. If you want to talk about money, you can talk about how much more you're going to pay us. That'd be great. Or if we're getting bonuses, thumbs up to that. But generally, just frame the issue for the audience is what I'm trying to say. Timing is key. If you're going to implement something large and at scale, like moving an agency of that, trying to get an agency of that size to implement DevOps, timing is key. One of the things I ran into, and I should have had more foresight in this, so this was my mistake, is we were undergoing a huge 2-year-long audit, and changing processes during that time frame probably wasn't the best suggestion. If at all possible, what we were working on, but if you have the power to just go implement a new process or a new CI/CD pipeline or automated testing or to try anything new, just go do it, see if it works, bring those results back. I promise you, people are going to be happy if it worked. And if you have great team culture, they're not going to say if it didn't work because you went out and tried something new that possibly could have improved everyone's work environment. Another thing we learned is eliminate external gatekeeping as much as possible. I'm not saying gatekeeping isn't important, but there's some things that can become a hindrance, like a large HR department that doesn't focus on bringing good employees in, but focuses more on keeping bad employees out. That could be a real hindrance when you're trying to acquire more talent. Having multiple stakeholders in a project can be difficult because not everyone has the same goals. They might have the same macro goals, but their micro goals might be specific to what they're in charge of. So, processes. Develop processes that empower teams. Customize processes per team. Let the teams use what works for them. Automate wherever possible. And then to the culture. You have to allow for psychological safety. It is one of the number one indicators in high-performing organizations. You have to promote a culture of empathy. Connect with your coworkers, with your leadership, with the people under you. Put yourself in their shoes and try to envision what they're going through. Keep a life-work balance. And I say life-work because life comes first. If you have a major life event, you will not be thinking about work. Life comes first always. COVID has shown us that. You have to trust in your employees, in your leadership, but I say both, but more so in your employees. You have to trust that they are good actors and they are there to do the best they can. They're not malicious. They want to do a good job and they want to come in and work. Embrace diversity. Diverse teams just make better products, period, because they bring different points of view to your products, to your product development process.
Sorry, we have just 10 seconds.
This is one we personally adopted on our teams. Is our teams get together, and as a team, we define a list of values that our team needs to abide by, and that really helps us in one, understanding what everyone values, and two, enforcing those values, even if outside influences try to get us to do something against those values. And it gives us a point of reference we can always go back to and say, hey, this goes against our team values. We cannot do it. You have to make learning a priority. And you have to practice a culture of blamelessness. I'll give you a quick story. I think I have enough time. Oh, maybe I don't. Okay. So another thing, hire for culture and train for skill. Hands down, if you can hire someone that is a 75, 80% fit for the skill, but is a great culture fit, you can train them up for the skill. It is a lot harder to train someone for that culture fit, even if they have 100% of the skills. So I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Nicole Forsgren. Says, if I am a senior leader and my team does not feel comfortable sharing risks, then I will never truly know reality. If your team isn't telling you the truth, you will never know exactly what's going on, and you will live in this alternate reality where you think everything is okay, but it's really not. With that said, looks like I am over my time, so I'm gonna have to cut it short. I would like to say thank you to the organizers. You did a tremendous job and you are awesome. Thank you for the swag bag, and the jacket is amazing. It fits perfectly. It's just still very warm here. I appreciate you for putting this together, and I hope to meet you all in person. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ike. That was awesome. Ahora vamos a ver una pequeña intervención de nuestro patrocinador Tren Micro.